Hi there, Maria here from Kuhn Recon. Today I want to show you how to make your own bread. And believe me, this is the easiest way. I am not into kneading bread, so this is a way of making it that is far simpler. I've made it in two of our pieces of equipment here. So I'm today going to use the uncoated all-round range. I'm using the 18 centimeter, which works really well with the quantity. But I have also made it in the shallow casserole, which is non-stick coated. It works just as well. And it ends up a little more rough and ready, kind of rustic looking there. Same quantities will apply. So this is a white flour bread. So you really want to get that strong bread flour specifically. When you go to the supermarket, make sure it says bread flour on it. We're going to use 3 cups of the bread flour. We're going to use 2 cups of warm water. Now this needs to be kind of the hotter end of the water that comes out of your tap. I wouldn't recommend boiling the water. I would recommend running your tap for a bit until it's kind of hot. You can still put your finger under it, but you don't want it boiling. 2 cups of that. A little sachet of yeast. They're best in the sachet because you can get individual 7-gram sachets and then it's fresh every time. But keep an eye on the yeast. If it's been in your cupboard for too long, it's not going to activate properly. And then a little bit of salt for seasoning. I use about half a teaspoon to a teaspoon. And then we're using spray oil, and that is to coat the inside of your casserole. So this is a casserole loaf of bread and it comes out so beautifully. I genuinely am not a baker and I'm so impressed with how this comes out. The other equipment you'll need is a large bowl, and this really does need to be quite a sizable bowl because when you're mixing in it, you're going to leave it to prove and it's going to double in size. I really like our silicone spatula. This really kind of allows the yeasty, stretchy dough to not stick. And I'm telling you, I don't even touch the dough with my hands. I use a spatula the whole time. So if you really don't like textures, then this is a great recipe. A little measure, obviously, to get my ingredients, and a tea towel, which you're going to place over the dough to let it rest when you have mixed it all together. So we've got our big bowl. Really, remember, it needs to be quite sizable because the dough that you're putting in is going to double in size. 3 cups of your strong white flour. This doesn't work as well with wholemeal because it doesn't activate with the yeast and get that elasticity. So this really is a white flour bread recipe. I'd recommend sticking to that. Make a little well in the middle. In goes your 7 grams of yeast. Mix that in just a little bit. And then we're going to go, this is our warm to hot water, and we're going to pop it in gradually, just a little at a time, and give it a stir. So this is a no knead recipe. So it means you're not going to knead with your hands at all. And that is my kind of recipe. The less work, personally, the better. But also it's not as mucky as you might think because it's all contained within the one bowl. And it's going to start to get kind of a little bit elastic. So just keep adding a little bit at a time and just keep stirring it. There's not really like a huge amount of technique to this one. If you're a new baker just wanting to give it a go, I highly recommend this type of recipe. And I am going to go in with the rest. And then it's going to come out kind of sticky. It's going to look a little bit kind of sticky. It's almost going to look a little bit wet, wetter than you might expect for a dough, a bread dough. But honestly, look at, you can get some elasticity going already. And it doesn't take long. I wouldn't over mix. So maybe 30 seconds, just until you can see that it's thoroughly mixing together. And this great silicone spatula is really good for controlling as you go. And I would say that that is pretty much mixed. I've got a little spoon just to scrape off the excess. You don't want to miss out any delicious homemade dough. And then, most important part, letting it rest, letting it prove. So we're just going to go over with a tea towel. This is just a dry tea towel. Some people use a damp one. 1 hour of rest, and that needs to be in a warm-ish, dry room. So we're not popping it outside, we're not putting it in the garage or whatever. We're going to keep it in the kitchen, just over there, where it can rest. Okay, so the bread has been proving. With the yeast and the white flour, you really only need 1 hour, but you can go longer. Mine was maybe an hour 20. And look at the beautiful result. Very light and fluffy, So this is going to be very sticky to work with. I'm going to try and avoid using my hands as much as possible because I just want to do the job quickly and not get too mucky. So what we need to do is place some flour down onto the surface. We're going to transfer the dough from the bowl to the surface and from the surface to our hot casserole that has been preheating in the oven for about 5-10 minutes max. So let's get some flour going. Okay, now I preheated my casserole without the lid. You can put our lids in the oven though at 240 degrees, which is hotter than you will need for most recipes. Today, my oven, I'm dealing with about 210, so it's quite hot, but our casseroles are very happy at that temperature. So first, I'm going to transfer the sticky dough onto the surface, and I'm going to use a spatula. You could use a wooden spoon, whatever it is you want to use, but we're not dealing with kneading or anything like that. We are just going to almost pour it out. And all of those light air pockets are going to just add to the deliciousness of your final loaf. Okay, that's it. Try and contain it a little bit. Almost try to shape it a little bit into a round. But truth be told, you are just going to pour it in to your casserole. And that'll be it. So next bit, you want to be very careful because you're dealing with a very hot casserole. So safety first. Remember to have your oven gloves handy. And like I said, 210 degrees and just 5 to 10 minutes to preheat. Mine was the 18 centimeter casserole. The 18 centimeter casserole comes out really beautiful. You could use a 20 centimeter casserole. And it would just be a slightly flatter loaf. Okay, now remember, this is really hot still. So I'm just going to use some spray. What I'm going to do is liberate one hand, but keep my other one because you just don't want to get into a situation where you're touching that hot casserole now. So this is uncoated stainless steel, so you will need some oil for sure, or just some butter going around there or something. I'm being a little generous, but this is actually a spray that has a little butter flavor to it, so that's quite nice for your loaf. Okay, then what I'm going to do is use my right hand in case I touch that handle, but this hand we're going to try to pour. I'm going to take this oven glove off, but it means I'm going to be super careful about not touching that casserole. Safety first, people. It's the only reason I'm really banging on about it. And honestly, we are just going to pour that in. Pour it in, pour it in, pour it in, pour it in, pour it in. So look, who knew you could make bread without even touching the dough with your hands? I'm just going to smoosh it all in. You know me, always with the technical terms. And then I'm just going to kind of pat it down a little bit. Now, here, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit more flour on the top. That gives it a nice texture on the top. And I'm going to do very carefully. Again, remember that's hot. There's a chance you might want to grab the handle here. So you're going to do just a few little slices. Oh, look at that stretchy dough. And all that's going to do is just allow it to expand. Now, in terms of timing, you're going to go with the lid on for 30 minutes back into the oven. Then you're going to take the lid off and allow it to cook for a further 15 minutes. So lid on, into the oven at 210 degrees for 30 minutes. Okay, we wait. So it's been 30 minutes. We're going to take the bread out just to take the lid off, and it's going to go back in. Beautifully risen. And it's going back in for 15 minutes with the lid off. 45 minutes has passed. So the bread is looking really golden brown. It's looking delicious and it's risen beautifully. So you're just going to want to take that out safely. Unbelievable. You can make this bread at home without kneading it, without getting your hands grubby or mucky or anything at all. Now, obviously this is quite hot. Either you can just let that cool to the side, let everybody know that it's hot, or you can give it a little jiggle and it literally should plop out. Whoopa! Look, now a little test you can do. Sound solid, cooked. I'm not going to leave it upside down like that. That would be a real shame. We're going to pop it right way up and everybody in your home is going to be unbelievably impressed that you made that yourself. And look at our uncoated stainless steel. Happy days. Absolutely. Now, I used the casserole, which has a bit of depth to it, but previously I have also used, this is called now the shallow casserole, which came out really beautifully. I did exactly the same procedure. I used the same measurements and I spritzed it a little bit as well. It has a non-stick coating, but I just wanted to make sure that it has that butteriness as well. So there it is, your bread, made very easy with Kuhn Rikon.